How does Scooby kayak? He rows. Hey, shh! Welcome back to Not Another Needless Sequel, where we talk movies and propose unnecessary prequels, sequels, reboots, and remakes. My name is Kane. This is my wife, Kelsey.
Hello.
And she's going to tell us the story of 2020's Scoob.
Scooby Dooby Doo.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn. That does about say it. I mean, everybody knows the story of Scooby-Doo.
Exactly.
And it's another retelling, just where they got some modern stuff in.
I actually liked this one where it showed them as kids.
Yeah. And
that was different than what I remember seeing as a kid, at least.
When I was a kid, when we were kids, they had
back in my day,
they had a pup named Scooby-Doo, which was them as kids.
I didn't see that show.
Well, it was pretty much the same age that they meet each other in this. But the way this movie starts out with Shaggy having no friends and being alone, Scooby's...
It's so sad.
I know. I cry every time I've seen this entrant.
When they meet. But let me just back up for a second. Opening the movie with California Love. Absolute vibe.
Just to
set
let
the vibe
know,
for the whole movie.
In case you didn't know where Venice was, they put that song so that you would.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so Scooby and Shaggy meet, and they bond over the sandwiches, which is obviously a big thing for them. And then it shows when they're trick-or-treating, they get bullied. I was laughing because the fucking bully is like, don't you know this stuff will rot your teeth? And
yeah, it's like, candy's bad for you.
Yeah, healthy bullies.
Yeah. One of my favorite lines in the movie we kind of skipped over when Scooby and Shaggy meet and the cop comes up. Yeah, and that's where he gives him his name, Scooby. He's named after Scooby Snacks. Mm-hmm. Scooby Snacks were not created for him.
Yeah.
In this world. And the cop goes, all right, if a dog has a middle name, I can't charge him for theft. I don't like it, but them's the laws. Yeah. And I was absolutely just dying. It was so good.
So funny.
It's such a good line. That was just all I wanted to highlight about that.
I wrote that down too, and I accidentally skipped over it, but yeah. So, after he gets bullied, Fred, Velma, and Daphne walk up, and they're like, hey, are you okay? Let's go inside this scary house and get your candy. They make comments like, let's not make this an all-the-time thing, and this is like their first mystery. They go in there just to get his candy, but supposedly the house is haunted, and of course it's a dude in a mask who is stealing like electronics and storing them in this house.
Yeah.
And so they find all that out just trying to get his candy, and they're like, this feels pretty good. Maybe we do this all the time. And then they do. And they do a little montage.
Yes.
Showing it, and the montage is like a shot-by-shot remake of the opening credits of the original Scooby-Doo show. Like,
that's cool.
You might have noticed, they walk a little different in that scene. Like,
yeah, they definitely do.
Because it's just matching everything.
I haven't seen the original Scooby-Doo. I mean, I guess we technically did watch it the other day.
Yeah.
The original Scooby-Doo, but there's so many different versions of it. I wasn't even paying that close of attention, but now that you point that out to me, I definitely notice it.
Yeah, so that's the one from 1969. It shows Space Kook, the Creeper, all these different villains, and it just, the whole thing was done right there. I think the only difference, honestly, was Fred during that montage showed him on a date with the van with the mystery machine.
Yes.
I think that's the only thing that was added, if I remember correctly, but I've rewatched the intro specifically for this.
This all leads to them being adults, and they're in a diner, and they're meeting with a potential investor who turns up to be Simon Cowell.
Yes, and now before we talk about that investment meeting, during that meeting, that's when they're first adults and we're hearing all their adult voices. Fred used to be voiced back in the day in 1969, like that show, by Frank Welker, who's doing the voice of Scooby in this movie. And I thought that was super interesting.
I wonder why they don't have the original Scooby.
I'm not sure if he's still alive.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I could be wrong. He could be alive. Maybe he doesn't do it anymore. Maybe they didn't ask him. They got a lot of flack for not asking
Matthew Lillard.
Yes, to do Shaggy.
You would have thought that if they would have, maybe they were like, if we ask Matthew Lillard, we have to ask Freddie Prinze Jr., and then we have to ask, I forget Velma's actress's name. You would know.
Didn't Freddie Prinze Jr. say he would never do it?
I don't know. Him and his
Sarah
wife,
Michelle Gellar.
Him and Sarah Michelle Gellar don't really act anymore. They just do those cleaning commercials, and they're like, I'm a parent, and that's pretty much it.
Do you remember they did like they showed like from the interview in that live action Scooby-Doo movie. Maybe I should talk about this if we ever did that movie, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. You know, Sarah Michelle Gellar's like, you know, this is a show we all grew up with and we can all relate, and I think the movie's going to be really great. Mm-hmm. And Freddie Prinze Jr., it shows his interview and he's like, I mean, it's a talking dog. What more can you ask for? Like,
yes, he does do that. I think before we get to, like you were saying, before the investment meeting, they're talking about something, and Daphne mentions like Scooby basically having an accident inside of the mystery van. It's
Fred. He's like talking about the mystery machine. Needs a lot of new parts, and I'm never gonna get that smell out.
And then Scooby goes, I told you I needed a walk. So they just like didn't take him outside, and he had to shit in the van.
Yeah.
And they can't get the smell out. It's just little things like that. I was absolutely losing my
mind. A lot
of
the jokes in this are very subtle, and I think it goes really well. But yeah, they're having that investment meeting with Simon. Oh, I guess I didn't finish saying, you know, so Fred Jones was voiced by Frank Welker, and the only time that Frank Welker did not do Scooby-Doo or did not do Fred's voice in the past was during A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, which I told you about. But besides that, he had done it for so long. And I didn't really read into it, but I was kind of thinking like, oh, that's interesting. Like he picked up the Scooby-Doo voice a bit during his time and they like got him back to do it. So I thought that was cool. So Simon Cowell says he's not going to invest in them because Shaggy and Scooby are the weakest link and they suck and they don't do anything. He says that Fred is the tank, Velma's the brains, and Daphne was, empath.
Empath, yeah, empath.
I guess that's a little hard for me to remember because she's typically not painted as that character in other iterations. She seems more like ditzy, but, you know, I'm glad they kind of went away from that, too. Like, she needs more of a personality besides I'm Fred's girlfriend.
I agree.
Which...
They're not even dating in this.
No, they're not. We'll get to that. I'll talk about that in a minute. But, yeah, so he's not going to invest in them. Shaggy and Scooby are hurt. They go to this bowling alley to hang out and talk about, you know, how...
It's because they decided to go ahead and go forward with it.
I didn't think they said... They were like, well, you know, Daphne tried to defend them. Hey, Scooby and Shaggy are our best friends. And they were, you know, Simon Cowell said, well, tough shit. You know, why'd they get him in here? It was actually him, too.
You can see I know. I know it was him. You could tell the moment he opened his mouth.
Yeah.
Usually he plays himself. Like, doesn't he also play himself in, like, an episode of BoJack?
Maybe. He was in Shrek. He played himself.
He was in Shrek at the Shrek 2.
I think it was the ending of Shrek 1. They did that karaoke dance part. No, it was Shrek 2 because they do the same stage where Donkey and Puss in Boots put on the show. Like, that's where he's doing American Idol. Yeah. I believe. Yeah. Okay, so at the bowling alley.
Off track today.
It's okay. At the bowling alley, they are attacked by these pins that are robots.
Actually, I think the robots are kind of cute. I'm not gonna lie.
When they turn into people, so I was gonna say, you know, they're fighting these robots in the bowling alley, and then they jump behind like the restaurant, and they come out dressed in the restaurant gear, and they're like, "Oh, so what do you robots want to eat?" And like they're all ordering, and they're writing it down, and they turn into like those cuter versions of the robots.
Yes.
And then you know he's like, one of them orders calamari, and he's like, "Oh no, we're out of the calamari," and they all turn back.
They all turn back evil and like, take them.
Like that bit is something they would do in classic cartoons all the time. Like you've seen Bugs Bunny do it a million times.
Yeah.
You know, like you dress up and suddenly the person trying to kill you is like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm here for a haircut. I'm here to eat. Like, whatever. And I love those bits. And I think that they do that a lot in this movie. Like, they do these classic jokes and they're just so good.
They pulled back to, like, what we would consider childhood cartoons.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's very modern in a lot of ways, but... Some of those jokes, I think a joke like that never dies. Like, if you do it too much, sure. And yeah, I think...
I mean, Warner Bros. Knew what they were doing. They were trying to appease the child audience, but still tugging at the heartstrings of the millennials and stuff that would be having kids now that would be old enough to watch this.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I don't consider myself to be, like, the biggest Scooby-Doo fan in the world. Like, I've always enjoyed it, but it's not like it's been, like, my top show.
I'm not like, let me... put on Scooby-Doo right now, but if it's on, I would watch it.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, because it's always been around in my life, like the characters all feel connected to me. Like I don't feel like it's my first time seeing them, even if they're all voiced by new people. And Scooby and Shaggy's relationship throughout this, like it doesn't feel like, oh, this has been built up for the last 20 minutes. It feels like this has been built up my entire life. So they are able to escape the bowling alley because they get pulled up by a tractor beam, and it's the Blue Falcon, which when they're kids, they make mention of Shaggy being a huge Blue Falcon fan. He's showing Scooby about Blue Falcon and Dino Mutt, and those are, of course, Hanna-Barbera characters as well. I don't recall if they had their own show or if I just watched them in somebody else's show, because they appeared in a lot of people's shows. Yeah. But I remember them, and I like them too. So they're up there in the Falcon Fury, and they meet the Blue Falcon, and they're like, "Oh, but you're not the Blue Falcon."
Yeah, they know immediately.
Yeah, because they're such big fans, and it's the Blue Falcon's son, Brian, and Dino Mutt calls him Brian.
I think it's important to note that the Blue Falcon and Dino Mutt, if we throw back to Halloween when they were children, that's what they dressed up as their first Halloween together.
Yeah, like they're their heroes. But, Brian, Blue Falcon's son, is, I guess, not that good of a hero, seemingly, and Dino Mutt's constantly mentioning it. They also have a third person, Dee Dee. She, pilots the ship, she's also hero, trained, all that stuff. Anyway, they tell them, they don't know why, but Scooby's important. And they're chasing down, they pretty much give the whole exposition of what's going on right in that moment. She's like, there's a guy named Dick Dastardly, and he's trying to get the 3 skulls of Cerberus.
But we don't know why he wants you guys.
Yeah, and for some reason, you're super important. Now, they do find out that Scooby is the only living descendant of Peritas, who was Alexander the Great's dog. And I wrote down that I thought it was interesting that actually was Alexander the Great's dog. Also, in the beginning,
Who thought dogs even existed?
It's older than you think. It's crazy how long people have had domesticated dogs.
I know.
But,
just like the one laying at our feet.
Yes.
We have Cosmo, the podcast dog.
Cosmo, the podcast dog. Just being silent down there. Hopefully silent for the rest of the podcast.
Yeah.
Also, when Scooby steals that meat in the very beginning of the movie, it's from a place called Alexander's Great Gyros. And so I thought that was funny.
It's throwing an ode. Yeah.
But
Easter egg? I almost said goose egg. Easter egg?
Yeah. So Dick Dastardly, he, of course, is also a Hanna-Barbera character. And he's trying to get these skulls. So once they figure all that out and they have Scooby, Blue Falcon, that is, his whole group, plus Shaggy and Scooby, are looking for where the third skull is, because he's already got 2 of them. And
let's mention, he got the second one because Dee Dee
you're right. That's what I was getting at.
Dee Dee
he didn't already have 2.
We're gonna go. It shows it's in Machu Picchu.
It wasn't
Machu Picchu. I'm thinking Machu Picchu because remember when we saw him?
Yeah, it shows Dick Dastardly's crimes, and we were reading through them. We paused the screen. She pointed out it said tripping old women.
Yes, tripping old women, which he did in Nigeria, and then something else he did in Machu Picchu.
Yeah, he just gave him a rap list.
It was in the Moby Desert.
Yes, and so Dee Dee calls that out and says, we're tracking the heat signature, but fucking Blue Falcon is like, well, I just reached out to my social media and I got...
They told me it'd be here.
Yeah.
And so...
They go to Romania where he gets this tip that it's at.
And in Romania, Dick Dastardly shows up after he already got the second skull because he did it as a bait to try and get Scooby.
Yes, and...
This is where the whole plan is revealed, that Scooby's the last descendant of the dog, and he needs him because it shows you how... Then that's when you're introduced to Muttley.
Yeah, so if you've seen Dick Dastardly in his... I don't think he had his own show. He was in a show called Wacky Racers or something like that. I could be wrong. He might have had one called Dick Dastardly's Flying Machine. But him and Muttley, they're a pair. It's his dog. His dog is evil with him. You've probably heard his laugh. I try and do the laugh. I'm going to try and do it here. I mean, you won't know, but I'm going to have to cut out all my heaving and hoeing.
Heave ho. That was so good.
Anyway, that's Muttley's laugh. So we get a flashback seeing that Dick Dastardly and Muttley opened a portal to the underworld because there's a bunch of treasure there. Of course, Dick Dastardly forced Muttley to go through first. Muttley goes through, grabs a bunch of treasure, but he can't come back. The reason he can't come back is because he is not a descendant of Peritas, and that is Alexander the Great's treasure room. So
he gets trapped there.
He gets trapped there for I don't know how long, years, I guess.
Yes, and Dick Dastardly forced Muttley to be the one to go through, and he got captured, but then he's very sad about it.
Yeah, he's trying to get him back, and that's what this is all about, is opening up that portal again.
I want to point out during this interaction where Dick is telling Scooby about this, he goes, I'm Dick, and he's like, yeah, Rick.
Yeah.
And he's like, Rick with the D. And I just think when it goes back to, he's like, I'm Shaggy, and he's like, Raggy. They do a good job of like pointing out his lisp and making it a joke multiple times throughout this movie.
I felt like that one was also, one of the like adult ones. Sort of like, I always reference it, the Lego Batman movie when Robin shows up and he's like talking to Bruce Wayne. He's like, yeah, all the kids at the orphanage call me Dick. And Bruce is like, yeah, kids can be cruel.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was that kind of joke because he's like, I'm Dick with a D. Dick, Dick, Dick.
Yes. And he's like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's like,
Rick
yeah, I'm
with
saying
the D.
That.
Yeah.
But in that moment where he's ranting about Dick and Rick, Scooby does escape after hearing the whole plan. He gets back to
the ship.
They're like, okay, so now we know why Scooby's important. And the Blue Falcon gifts him like a super suit, and it starts to put kind of
a rift.
Yeah, a rift between Shaggy and Scooby because Scooby's now super important.
But
apparently,
Scooby takes off his collar.
Yes, when he's getting his suit on, he has his collar on that Shaggy gave him when they were kids, and he promised he'd never take it off. And they seem to have like a misunderstanding where they both look at each other when he's supposed to take it off, and Shaggy's like, okay, well, I guess. He like nods his head, and Scooby's like, oh, okay, I guess. Like they both just are like not wanting to do it, but they agree for the other person almost.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a rift because they're used to staying behind. That's Scooby and Shaggy's thing is like the rest of the gang is fighting the monster. They're hiding, eating a sandwich, pretending to be waiters, that kind of thing.
Running away. Yeah.
Yeah.
All of these things.
And Shaggy's feeling alone again, which was shown in the beginning of the movie. It's like his whole thing. Like Scooby is his one friend. And so I kind of understand where they're coming from on both ends. But they get into a bit of an argument when they finally are like, all right, we're going to Mount Mesquis. I believe that's how you say it. They get to Mount Mesquis. They go inside of it where it's like a whole new ecosystem in there. It's like dinosaurs and stuff. And they land and they're like, all right, we're going to go get the skull. And Scooby is heading with Blue Falcon, Dino Mutt, Dee Dee. And Shaggy's like, oh, that's okay. Me and Scooby are going to stay on the ship. That's what we always do. And Scooby's like, not this time. And that causes them to have like a really big argument because he's like, you're going to leave me. And like, this is what we do. And it's sad because Scooby's trying to be like, just come on. And he's like, no. And I don't know. I can't say anybody's right in that argument, but also it is what it is. I mean, it gets fixed pretty quick.
Yeah. I will say in the meantime of them going to the like dinosaur island and all of that, that's when Mystery Inc. gets pulled over by a cop pretending to be a woman that Fred is like obsessed with, and then it turns out to be Dick Dastardly, and he's like, I'm just having all kinds of feelings right now.
Yeah. And when he shows up, as the woman, Dick Dastardly, he's like, oh, so the guy that's chasing you must be pretty handsome, huh? And fucking the girls are like, pretty gross,
pretty
actually.
Gross.
Like, bulbous nose, huge chin.
They're like a rat with hair or something like that.
And he comes out, he's like, how dare you? Anyway, he kidnaps all of them, the three of them, because they've been separate this whole time. I mean, if you haven't caught that.
And they put him on the ship, and they're locked in a cage, and Daphne makes friends with the little robot that Dick ripped its head off and replaced with a handheld vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, early in the movie, he got mad at that robot and was talking shit on them for failing, and he did that, but she cleans out that vacuum cleaner robot's face because he kept sneezing, and then he's their friend. So he lets them out. He does show up later as well.
And then they see Muttley. They learn all about that. And then Dick Dastardly keeps Daphne and Velma. And then it shows Fred go down to meet Shaggy at the ship.
Yeah, but it's not Fred, which you can tell pretty quick, I guess, if you're paying attention, because he says something like, I was in his super cool airship. I mean, that thing is so cool.
Yeah, so you could tell that it's obviously Dick Dastardly.
Yeah.
But Shaggy doesn't realize it and leads them right to Scooby and the skull.
Yeah, so Scooby and Blue Falcon now, they've been in this arena fighting Captain Caveman, another Hanna-Barbera character who is protecting the skull, and they're losing. I mean, they're doing really bad.
I love Tracy Morgan
as Captain Caveman. He did seem really good. Like, he really fit it, it felt.
He did. It was so good.
So they are having that fight, but then, when Shaggy and Fred show up, Blue Falcon and Dynamite are like, okay, but how did Fred get here? Because we're inside of a mountain, and he brought a van, and they put it together. That's Dick Dastardly, and he's able to
get the skull and Scooby.
Yes, he gets them both, and then he goes to Athens, where they are gonna open the gates. So he drops all the skulls, and it immediately starts shooting out like green Loki looking shit everywhere, and
I was thinking like Hades Underworld stuff.
That makes more sense.
We did play Fortnite though, so like
yeah.
You know.
So the gates to the Underworld are opened, and Dick Dastardly gets in there, and he sees Muttley, and he thinks Muttley's dead, and he picks him up, and he's all like, "My boy,"
he's like, "I'm here for my treasure," and he really is there for Muttley. Because before in the movie, when I saw the story of like how Muttley ended up there, I was like, he doesn't deserve Muttley.
He doesn't, and I don't know. It's kind of sad, like because there's even a scene where when they are running out. I mean, you know, we'll get to this part, but when they're running out, Daphne's like, "Oh, he got his friend back," and I'm like, I feel the same way, but also like, what a dick.
I know, but he's like, "Yeah, oh Muttley, oh I'm sorry, I was too late."
Yeah, he thinks.
And then it pans to Muttley, and you can't see Dick's face, and Muttley's like laughing.
Yeah. But then they, you know, they get into like a little argument, like a classic, like back and forth. And he's like, "Oh, I can't, you know, stay mad at you." So they grab a bunch of gold, and Dick and Muttley are just gonna leave. Like, yeah. And meanwhile, Cerberus has come out of the underworld.
Yeah, they're fighting the three-headed dog, and it's like Scooby and Shaggy are like fighting it, and they're all trying to figure out a way to beat the Cerberus. And Dino Mutt talks Falcon Boy Brian into being Blue Falcon into trying to be a hero.
Yeah, because he's had a hard time the whole movie where he's like, "I can't live up to my father," that kind of thing. They make references of it throughout, and they don't get along, Dino Mutt and Brian. But they all work together, and they're able to lure Cerberus back inside, and they're supposed to close the gate. Apparently, the gate can only be closed by descendant of Peritas.
And his best friend.
Yes. And so they have to do it with Scooby and Shaggy, but at first they believe somebody has to stay inside the gate to do it. And Scooby and Shaggy are going back and forth. Who's going to do it? Shaggy finally just presses his hand and he goes through. And you think he's going to be gone. It's super fucking sad.
I cried. It was so sad.
Yeah, I cried too. Even the second and third time I watched it, and I knew he was going to come back.
I know.
But it's just so sad because, again, their friendship is so built up. And I actually read the original title of the film was Scoob, like SCOOB, but it was like a acronym, like S dot, you know. And the plot was all about Scooby and Shaggy being rescued by a larger organization led by Blue Falcon. So like that part we kind of see, but it wasn't so focused on Scooby and Shaggy, I guess, and the Mystery Machine. It was more like a Hanna-Barbera movie, like just all of the characters. But they said as they were working on it, they were just like doing all these emotional arcs for Scooby and Shaggy, and they were like, this is all we want to see.
Yeah.
And so they did that. They kind of pivoted the whole movie towards that because this movie was planned to be the first installment of a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. You know, everybody's trying to do those. I mean, people listening will have their own opinions about whether or not people should do that, you know, because Marvel made it popular and now everybody wants that.
Yeah.
But I do think that this movie did their relationship perfectly. Like, it's so, like, emotional to see them seemingly going away from each other. As they're sitting there crying, another statue appears, and it has, like, a different saying on it, and Scooby walks up to it and says something like, "Shaggy, you said you'd never leave, like, please come back." And the door on the statue opens, and you see Shaggy standing there, and then it's, like, comical. The Cerberus hand flicks him out.
Yeah.
And, like, he just bounces out. But that ends, really, that mystery, and then they are shown to be back in Venice. They've opened up a Mystery Inc., like, shop place for people to come, and, you know, it shows even them get a call right away on Velma's computer. Like, somebody's like, "Oh, you know, there's a old sea captain ghost."
Yeah.
And that's it. So overall, you know, if you can't tell, like, I really love this movie. I rated it a 4.5, like, and I'm not even really sure where I lost points. It's like overall, just everything about it. I do remember what I lost points on. I think if outside of the main characters, the animation on people, not the locations, just people's faces is horrible. I think they all look so plain. They look like, you know, that shitty fucking kids show that you see toys of sometimes. I don't know what it is. I've never saw it, but it's like a ladybug superhero. Like, these days, I feel there's so many kids shows, with the exception of ones like, it's the 3D animated kids shows. They're done so shitty. Like, the faces are so bare. There's no details. The skin is just a flat color. Because they don't care. It's a kid.
I was thinking about the people from the movie like Hercules, or like when we watch Attack on Titan.
Yeah.
And you see like their faces aren't even animated on it.
They just have like a
nose. Yeah, and they're like fighting. That's like a super intense scene, and they're like not even moving. That's what I also gave it a 4.5. I think for me, like, we rate movies differently too, but when I rate a movie and like I'm like, oh, like I would love to watch it again. Most of those are like 5s. Like, I would watch Scoob again, like, if it was on, but I'm not going to be like, let's watch Scoob today.
Yeah.
And to me, I feel like anything I give a 5, I'd be like, hell yeah, let's do it. As where that, I'd be like, oh, you think we could, like, watch something else?
Yeah. Okay.
But Scoob is really good. It was really cute. It was a great movie.
I thought so too.
Cosmo, the podcast dog, also enjoyed it.
He did watch it a little bit.
He did.
He didn't mind. Okay, so for the game, I'm going to show you a picture of a Scooby-Doo villain from the classic show, and you are going to tell me what you think their name is. So...
I remember this villain you're showing me right now.
Here's the first one.
Can I get a hint and ask a question, a single question?
Okay.
What are those suits called?
I have no idea. But it doesn't have to do.
I'm going to describe it for the audience. It's like one of those, like, where you would go underwater in, like, the shark cage and, like, you put the helmet on and you're, like, you can be underwater. I'm going to call him the lake monster.
That is the ghost of Captain Cutler.
That is the ghost of Captain Cutler.
Okay. Next one.
That's the ghost of Frankenstein's brother.
That's the creeper. Okay, next one.
I do not remember this one at all.
Just give him a name if you can't.
That is...
I said his name, if that's a good hint. I said his name during this podcast. Oh, you weren't listening.
This is Hellfire Skeleton the Fourth.
That would have been a better name, probably. It's Space Kook.
Oh, I don't like the name.
Okay.
That is RoboCop meets Squid Games.
It's Charlie the Funland Robot.
I don't
last
like
one.
That. Oh, last one. Jeremiah Johnson.
That's...
Nobody will know what that is, probably.
That's Minor 49er.
Oh, that is Minor 49er.
Anyway, those are all the classic Scooby-Doo villains.
I did so
Space
good.
Kook was in the movie, and I mentioned that
in the
montage. So was the Creeper.
I don't even know their name. First off, you know that I'm not good at names.
So, a follow-up to Scoob was in development. On December 22nd, 2021, HBO Max released a sizzle reel featuring a first look at the Christmas prequel film titled Scoob, Holiday Haunt. The film takes place before the events of the first film, with the voice of Scooby-Doo and the younger gang reprising their roles. On August 2nd, 2022, Warner Bros. Discovery canceled its release, citing cost-cutting measures and its refocus on theatrical films rather than creating projects for streaming. Later that month, it was reported that the film would still be finished through Warner Bros. Discovery had no plans to release the film. The film was finished on November 4th, 2022, and allegedly no one will ever see it.
That's some bullshit.
I mean, you know, they're very normal over there at Warner Brothers. They just cancel things that people are begging to see and then make people try and pay for it and then be like, nah, we're not really going to.
And then they're like, let's release Aquaman 2.
Yeah. We'll release Aquaman 2, but Scoob Holiday Haunt, nobody needs that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
even though I bet Scoob makes more money.
I would have been so excited for that.
Yeah.
Instead, we'll just give our sequels, starting with you.
My sequel is called Scoob 2, Electric Boogaloo. Just kidding. It's Scoob 2, When Worlds Collide.
Oh, my goodness.
Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
It's been 5 years, and Scoob and the gang have been working to stop ghostly villains worldwide. The beginning credits show how they consistently battle, with Muttley and Dick Dastardly in between cases. But after their last defeat, Muttley and Dastardly have kind of maintained a low profile, leaving Mystery Inc. like wondering, you know, what's going on. Because at the end of Scoob, I don't know if anybody knows this, we saw like in the pictures, it's not an after credit scene, but like in the photos when it's telling you the cast, it shows Muttley break Dick Dastardly out of prison. Mm-hmm. So one day, on a call for Mystery Inc., the gang gets sucked through a portal, and they end up in the regular human world rather than animated.
As Zac Efron, or is it going to be different people?
No, they're going to be the animated characters. It's like Looney Tunes.
Oh, okay,
back in action meets...
Yeah, I see.
Meets like almost Barbie.
Yeah.
Okay, so where they portaled through, they're at none other than a Comic-Con.
Perfect.
As they're walking around Comic-Con, they're being praised for their costumes, but they're confused as they're not in costume. That is when they start seeing posters for Scooby-Doo and run into none other than Matthew Lillard, taking photos and signing autographs for portraying Shaggy. Once he sees them, he is in disbelief until they corner him backstage away from everyone. They're concerned as they believe the portal was a trap set for them and something evil is lurking, but they don't have a motive. Matthew agrees to help them, and they're brainstorming different ideas about how to solve the mystery when Matthew gets a call from his agent that he needs to go to Warner Brothers that day for a meeting about an upcoming movie. He leaves the gang alone, and at this meeting, as he's walking out, he overhears someone talking to the Warner Brothers executives about killing Mystery Inc. and taking over the Scooby-Doo or Hanna-Barbera universe and being the new main people. He reports this to the gang immediately and suggests that they're going to need more help as they can't take on this evil plot alone. Quickly, they're able to assemble the entire Scooby-Doo gang from the live-action movies. But they're like, we're just actors. They get Freddie Prinze Jr., they get Sarah Michelle Gellar, and Velma. I'm sorry I don't know her name. You would know it.
She's always Velma to me, in my heart.
Oh my god, he's obsessed. Anyways, they don't know who's behind the evil plan, but they go to Warner Brothers and try and work things out. So all of the, the real live action people, they just go and they're trying to talk to Warner Brothers. But once there, some of the gang gets captured other than Shaggy, Matthew, and the Scoobies. They have to work to save the rest of the gang. After saving them and during the big fight, it all comes out that it's Dick Dastardly behind this because he wants to be the star and is tired of having Mystery Inc. meddling in his business. But wait, Dick Dastardly is actually wearing a mask, and the real culprit is Scrappy Dappy Doo.
Scrappy Dappy Doo.
Scrappy and Muttley formed an alliance after Muttley realized Dick didn't value him as a team member, and Scrappy felt left out by the gang. The team ultimately defeats Scrappy and Muttley and convince the Warner Brothers not to cancel and kill them, and then they're able to portal back home. Once home, they open a new Mystery Inc. in Malibu instead of Venice.
Okay. Matthew Lillard actually is returning for something Scooby-Doo related, but nobody knows what it is yet.
I honestly, I contemplated if I wanted to make Matthew Lillard the villain and, him have, all of these posters of the Scoob movie on the wall because he wasn't cast to be Shaggy, because he plays a great villain in a lot of his movies, but I was like, you gotta keep him light in this one. But I almost made him a villain in my sequel. I
actually think it was Looney Tunes Back in Action where there's a scene of them walking through a restaurant and you see Matthew Lillard at lunch with the animated Scooby and Shaggy, and Scooby's like, yeah, if you mess up this interpretation, I'll give you a Scooby snack. I'm pretty sure that was a joke that happened in that movie.
Yeah, but I did Looney Tunes Back in Action meets Barbie, kind of.
Space Jam.
And Space Jam. I wrote up here my idea, and I said Space Jam, Looney Tunes Back in Action, Barbie. Because Barbie does it. Barbie's just not animated.
Yeah, for sure.
But sorry if you haven't seen Barbie and I spoiled a little something, but that technically is in the trailers, so don't come at us. Anyways.
Okay. Yeah. Well, for mine, I just called it Scoob 2, no subtitle. Scooby and the gang have had much success in Venice, solving mysteries with everyone's own quirky personality doing its part, and that has remained second nature to Mystery Inc. all this time. The gang receives a call from Yogi Bear, who claims a ghost is stealing all the fish in Lake Jellystone. The gang begins their normal investigation when they are interrupted by a group of characters claiming they are there to investigate the fish as well. The group is none other than Jabberjaw the Great White Shark and his friends Biff, Shelly, Bubbles, and Clamhead. It turns out Yogi called both of them, much to their dismay. Jabberjaw's group claims they have jurisdiction on all water-related crimes, and they haven't forgiven Mystery Inc. for taking away that old sea captain ghost from them. The gang tries to work side by side with their aquatic counterparts, but the two groups keep getting in one another's way. So that's where I think a lot of the comedy of this would come through, is that Jabberjaw and Scooby-Doo are nearly the same. It's a shark and a dog with 4 people. Yeah. And it's 2 very similar groups.
Yeah.
And Jabberjaw has always been second fiddle to Scooby-Doo. It wasn't as popular. It didn't get remade.
Poor Jabberjaw.
I know. So I thought this would be a funny way to kind of modernize Jabberjaw and also do a commentary on the fact that they're so similar, but one didn't do well.
Yeah, well.
Plus, it's all Hanna-Barbera. When no clues turn up, the groups blame one another, and cartoony chaos ensues, leaving both groups to head home and try and find their next lead. Their search leads them to several other small Hanna-Barbera characters until they finally find a solid lead from someone telling Scoob and the gang to go to an old raceway for answers. Upon arriving, they see that they were beaten to the punch by Jabberjaw's group. Both groups start fighting when the real villain is revealed as they capture both groups. Out of the shadows comes an old speed buggy car with eyes.
Herbie Fully Loaded?
It's Speed Buggy, who you probably also haven't heard of, who was another Hanna-Barbera character that was a talking car with 3 people. I also felt very similar to Jabberjaw and Scooby, just they replaced the animal with a car.
Well, I mean, they did Herbie Fully Loaded, so...
Well, it was before Herbie Fully Loaded.
I'm just saying. Herbie?
So... It's Speed Buggy, and he begins to monologue about how his friends and him used to go on adventures and even solve mysteries until he was told nobody needs their help, and the group disbanded, leaving Speed Buggy alone. Aww. So when he heard about not only the popularity of Mystery Inc., but their oceanic doppelgangers, he thought maybe he could form a new team with the best members from each team. Each group wants to help him out until he reveals his plan is to kill the leftover members. A fight breaks out as each group tries to survive, but they have to put their differences aside to survive and save the day. Speed Buggy is being towed away after they save the day.
Towed away.
There's a car.
That's so good.
Speed Buggy's being towed away to jail when he sees his friends, Mark, Debbie, and Tinker, show up to apologize to him and rekindle their friendship. So I tried to kind of keep that theme of like, it's a villain, but they have a heart in some way.
Yeah.
Plus, like I said, I think doing a commentary on Jabberjaw alongside Scooby-Doo is perfect. But that's all.
I liked it. I was thinking about, I probably should have mentioned where the comedy came. I think we got to get Matthew Lillard to do a little Shaggy, occasionally, bring it on. He's like, oh, I just acted the part. And, I feel like that's where a lot of it would come in,
Yeah,
but,
no, I mean, it's hard because, we're not writing out we're not writing out every line. So
yeah,
it's hard
I'm no script writer. This is not even a side gig. This is a hobby for me. This is his gig, but...
If this is my gig, then I am losing.
Maybe not someday.
Well, thank you for making it this far. If you'd like to vote on whose sequel idea was the best, come by our YouTube channel for the polls, or let us know your idea with a comment, tweet, or you can reach us at needlesssequel@gmail.com. Links, as always, will be wherever you are listening. If you had a good time, share a show with someone, leave us a review, and come back for more. We'd love to have you. All right, be easy, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Bye.